What was the worst phase of your life? Probably the one where I was shoveling drugs and liquor down my neck for about 10 years straight. When I had depression without even knowing. If mom didn't make me go to the doctor, I don't know what I would have done. The one I'm going through. Middle school I was wannabe a DJ, haha. Good times. Depressed at 9 and hated everyone for the whole year. Even believed my parents weren't my biological parents. Ugh. I hate that version of myself. 2017 present. Never recovered from trauma. Every time things get better and I work through some of it, something else horrible comes along. Now I just drug myself with CBD gummies and alcohol, wondering if I'll ever have the strength to try to work through it and actually do something with my life. In the end I doubt it, considering how much worse therapy and going back to school made it. I doubt things will get better for me, but on the bright side I've learned alcoholic pudding is great. When I was 12, either that or when I was a freshman in high school. I always hung out with a couple kids who were a grade higher than me. One of them was a writer and she read my cursed 400 PG Percy Jackson spin-off fanfic. I'm proud to say that most of it were orcs, so I gladly avoided that cringy part of fanfic writing. Aka fanfics centered around existing characters with maybe one orc. I can't bring myself to delete it, nostalgic pride, but I'm too horrified to even open the document. I didn't have friends from ages 11 to 16, so I used to talk to myself excessively and to my stuffed animals. Yes, till 16, I was very sheltered and extremely socially awkward. Being 30, yo. That's life changing. At the end of 2010/beginning of 2011, my high school girlfriend of 2 years dumped me and then led me on for a few months. Oh, and also my 3-year-old niece died. And the priest answered his phone in the middle of his eulogy. To the Catholic Church on 41 in Ruskin, Florida, fuck you. My parents' divorce. High school, had untreated depression, and have a lot of missed opportunities, because I thought I would be dead before 18. I'm 27, I'll be 28 in Oct now, and I'm still trying to catch up with normal experiences. That is, I still do not have my driver's license, and I still live at home. I'm doing a lot better now though. Catch up is just frustrating. Probably when I was a Warrior Cats kid. In a 1-week period a few years ago, I had my car break down twice, my long-term significant other break up with me, seemingly out of the blue, and I broke my foot. That was the worst week of my life, but the months of financial, emotional, and physical recovery that followed those events were pretty bad too. Right now. Ages 8 to 16, parents divorced, constant bullying in school, puberty, almost lost my best friend to suicide, emotional, physical, and verbal abuse from family and a now ex. Everything just absolutely sucked, and it most definitely contributed to mental/physical health issues later in my life. July 25th, 2017 to March 13th. 2018, my diagnosis of breast cancer to my last dose of radiation. I was in a toxic friendship because they were the only people I knew that weren't scared of fighting off someone. I'd been beat up on a school bus and a kid grabbed my breast in my first year at that school. I felt like I needed someone else to stand up for me. One of these people was so degrading of everything. My religion, my clothing choice, my food choice, to the point that I stopped eating, wore only neutral colors, and said bad things about my own religion. I didn't believe anything I said, but I still said it because I was scared he'd shout at me. I became depressed, tried to overdose on Benadryl. I ended the friendship last year after he became possessive, and have never been better. I'm working on adapting a Zen mindset right now, and am looking forward to a life I create. Right now, not in terms of emotions and self-esteem. When my mother got diagnosed with Lewy bodies dementia at 57, after 2 months they said they had made a mistake, and that she wasn't suffering from any dementia at all, but that the side effects of her Parkinson's medication in combinations with painkillers caused her to hallucinate and forget things, occasionally just blacking out, and doing weird things like pouring hot cocoa over her iPad. I was a real bad addict, and had issues with any form of drugs, though not heroin or anything with needles. During those 2 months I was either with her, or taking excessive amounts of drugs alone in my room. I was in a struggle where I wanted to commit suicide as soon as she were to pass, but I couldn't, because my mom made me promise I wouldn't. I was a terrible 8-year-old. I'm so sorry my parents had to deal with me then. Through my preteens, I was heavily depressed and hurting myself. My mother's family were abusive to her, and she wouldn't let go of her dad. He was the only innocent one in her family beside her. This gave me so much anxiety that I'd rather hurt myself than go to school, so I purposely fell, or jumped down the stairs, or made myself ill. It doesn't help that my teacher for 1 year had bullied me constantly as well, and I mean full on bullied me. My parents found out, despite me telling them constantly, but they thought it was my anxiety, but only found out right before I changed year. If we are going by cringiness, I would say my tortured writer/poet phase junior year of high school, where I had an emo look and wrote terrible poetry that I posted on my Xanga. Here, http://unga.com/a/friend is an album of how I looked back then. These were all MySpace/Xanga profile pictures, and here https://i.unga.com/slmphpb.png is a screenshot of a folder with some of my poetry from back then, to give you an idea of how cringy it was. The funny thing was that, even though I looked emo, the closest thing to emo music I listened to was like Bright Eyes Fevers and MIRRORS* album. I was more into punk/indie rock. Luckily, I grew out of that phase by my senior year, so it didn't last long. I'm in it. My best semester of school so far was cut short, as was my motivation. Everything's closed. The gains I was making in the gym were cut short, and at this point, I'm only maintaining baby muscles on my noodle arms. I'm likely not gonna have any work all summer, which is nice, but I intensely value having spending money, and, to top it all off, my grandfather is now dying due to reasons that aren't covered. Which is the first major death I've experienced in life. I have no idea where I'm headed, or if I'll even be able to go back to campus in August, where I think I really do feel happiest. It really does show me that despite how shit things feel right now, if this is the worst it's been to me, I have it really damn good. Hell, even my day to day is pretty enjoyable. I pug stomp in Valorant/CS with friends, play Animal Crossing, occasionally do some homework, thankfully, that'll be over next week, and eat. I've learned to cook a bit too, which is fun. Regardless, this year has been total shit. Remember when people thought 2016 was a bad year because of some celebrities and a gorilla dying? Too much has changed into shorter time. The Great Recession. I fell into debt I wasn't able to get out of until 2015. I learned from it though and now have savings set aside. I cut my bangs. Emo phase in high school was pretty cringe-worthy, but it got me laid, so no regrets. High school fucking sucks. In the 1990s wheat potatoes were being harvested. It was a living nightmare. Innocent potatoes separated from their families, only so we can satisfy human hunger. Being depressed as a teenager. Missed out on so many things growing up because of it. I still feel like I'm playing catch up in life sometimes. I think I'm living through it. I just got laid off because of COVID. I'm forcibly separated from friends and family because of lockdown. I can't make rent. Shit sucks. Shortly after turning 25 I got really sick. Was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. Horrible few years fighting for my life. Pain, nausea, depression when it was supposed to be the best times. Forced to drop out of grad school shortly after getting accepted cause I couldn't do it from the hospital. I spent more time in the hospital than at home. 14 months of morphine, 5+ months of being TPN being fed though a tube in my arm that kept getting infected so had to move it to the opposite arm a couple times. Then complications such as multiple pulmonary embolisms which are painful, collapsed lung etc. Lost way too much weight way too fast. Face ballooned up, and acne from all the steroids, and mounting medical debts that I stopped counting when it hit $2 million. Shittiest part of my life by far. That time I was addicted to heroin was pretty bad. Middle school. Parents just got divorced. Mom was going back to school and working 2 jobs, so I never saw her. We lived in a bad part of town, and I was a morbidly obese pale nerd. Kids literally punched me in the stomach as hard as they could when we changed classes. They'd take my backpack and throw it in the shower and turn the water on. They'd grab my stomach and my chest when I would change in phase. Edition. One day in 8th grade, I finally snapped and got into a huge fight. Mom got called into the school, and when she gets there, I broke down hysterically crying about what had happened to me for years, and how I couldn't take it anymore. She called my father, whom she fucking hated, and I spent the next 2 years living with him, until she finished school. This probs isn't as bad as some people's, but maybe it will resonate with some people. But the transition from being a student with no responsibilities into your first year or so of work. Giving up old habits, losing touch with people, and moving away for work, not being able to do as much fun stuff as you once could. That time in my life wasn't really terrible, but it was sad to move on from it. Not knowing what life is all about, realizing that life doesn't have any value when it just stops with death. And not being able to think about anything else but this. Is it a phase? After I was forced to leave my mother's womb. The constant emotional abuse from my biological mom, brothers, and physical abuse from dad. Now I'm adopted, going strong almost 1 year now, and I'm as happy as can be. 8 to 16. Parents got divorced, mom had a nervous breakdown, had to move schools, dad married an absolute C*NT of a woman, after I begged him not to, then he died of brain cancer, when I was in my second last year of school. So not really a phase that I had control over, but those years were a bitch. About 2 years ago, when I was severely depressed, life wasn't going the way I wanted it to. I was verbally abused every day by my boss, hated my life and the decisions I made, couldn't afford rent or food, I was starving most of the time, I was seriously considering just ending it all, because I couldn't stand this pathetic existence anymore. Luckily my old boss needed me back. So I quit my toxic job and went back to my old one, and I started making money again. Eventually moved into my own house and things have been great ever since. I still go through periods of depression. I always have struggled with that, but I don't want to kill myself anymore, which is nice. 1998 to 2013. I was ages 20 to 35. I was in a terrible, loveless, painful marriage. I was trying so hard to raise 2 kids, build a career, make a home, but I had nothing. Every one of my successes was systematically diminished. I spent 15 years barely breathing. When I think of my ex-husband, it's like thinking about an unpleasant stranger I met in passing many years ago. It's like my mind won't let me return there. Thank fuck it's over. As of now I'm 15. I have a teacher who constantly bullies me and gives me 6 hours of homework, and if I don't I get physically abused. I feel like I have no control over my life. I can't focus, relax, think. I've been constantly humiliated in front of my classmates. It's been going on like for 6 months. After this lockdown cycle will start again. Super baggy pants. There's a nostalgia factor that makes me miss JNCOs, but all in all, I'm glad my clothes fit appropriately now. Probably the 21 years between about ages 6 and 27. My early onset bipolar disorder kicked in around 6 years old, and I wasn't stable until I was 27. It was the worst. When I was involved in drug dealing as a dealer's driver. If you're a part of it, you deal with all of it. Unless you've gone through it, you have no idea what it feels like being on the opposite end of a Glock 9mm thinking you're gonna die during an attempted robbery. Think about it to this day and I get anxiety just thinking about it. Middle school and early high school. Had so many panic attacks it really sucked. One memory from that time was when I had a panic attack in my school's bathroom and I tried leaving the stall, but it wouldn't unlock, so I had to crawl through the crack while sobbing and hyperventilating. I'm still young, so not as remotely as bad as others may had it. So basically, there was this girl I liked, and I was too afraid to get close to her. My friend also liked this girl. He had more courage than me, and he got to be in a relationship with her for some time. They broke up, had way enough time to make a move. However, one of my other friend who was pretty close to her got a lot more closer, and they agreed to go to prom together. It was a lot of self-doubt, nights of being angry at myself, and trying to get some confidence. Things are going better now, still ain't closer to her though. So far, 2017 to 2019. Was insanely depressed and self-destructive during my last year of uni, and after graduating 2020 was looking good but then, yeah no. I think this is an interesting question because we always view hindsight in 20/20. What we view today as the worst phase of our life now is different than 5 years ago, and will change again in another 5. Point is to always reevaluate our life, and learn from every phase. Whether it was good or bad. Elementary school was terrible, and I never want to go back. Junior high, middle school for the Americans. I had moved to the city right before grade 8. Junior high was grade 7 to 9, so I knew no one. While most kids knew people from the year before, the only friends I made didn't give a shit about me. I ate alone at lunch half the time and I would hide out in the bathrooms to avoid people. The guy who had a locker next to mine would harass me constantly. It was also a rough time for my appearance and fashion sense. Worst 2 years of my life hands down. Middle school, for sure. Don't hurt, just flirt. I had pretty bad acne toward the end of my high school years and into college. I don't think it ever led to full-on depressed feelings, but there were times that really got me down. 2013 was the worst year of my life. I went through a very unexpected breakup, and it destroyed me. I was a dumb teen who didn't know how to cope with loss. I'm doing so much better now, thank God. This phase. When I was lying to myself that I believe in my religion. My mind was occupied with so many questions that I could not answer. The best sleep I ever had was when I said to myself I'm not a believer anymore. Lying to myself was the worst thing that ever happened to me. When I was pretending to be straight. The first 2 years after I left the military. Drank constantly, hated my life, hated myself. The mind is an awful thing if you allow it to be. November to February 2019 to 2020 shitty overall, dealt with major depression and anxiety because of the relationship I was in. Before I was diagnosed with and medicated for a mental disorder. It literally saved my life. I finally had the ability to control my thoughts and behavior and no longer had the constant urge to harm myself and end my life. Before that I was going downhill real fast. When I thought frosted tips were cool. Birth to present. 2 to 3 close relatives dying in the same month. I think that question should be what was the worst phase of your life asterisk so far. High school for sure. The one I'm in now. Childhood. Fall/winter 2018, I was super depressed already, and then my GF of 1 year cheated and broke up with me. It was really tough, but I'm glad I'm better now. From about 2013 to 2016 I was going to college and getting progressively worse migraines. I had them before, but this is when they started to get really bad. I had a hard time committing to anything. I made it to most my classes, but the migraines bothered me, so that was basically all I was doing. Towards the end I was doing an internship and had trouble sitting in front of the computer for 8 hours. My headaches would get so bad that I could comprehend what I was looking at. I also lost all my friends because I was always home. I finally found a doctor who suggested Botox, and I'm doing good now. Probably my last relationship. They were super standoffish and distant, and that alongside some other stressors added on, and I kind of had my worst OCD episodes ever. I nearly got institutionalized. Relapsed in self-harm. I'm finally starting to recover, but eesh. It was rough. Those 2 years, where all I thought about was killing myself. I look back on those days and see how much of an idiot I was. I was a horse girl from 2nd to 5th grade. And I wondered why nobody wanted to be my friend. When I was being molested. I went through my being a cheerleader and being a goth phase in one fell swoop. That wasn't a good time. A very hard emo phase, thought I was smarter than everyone, hated myself, listened to My Chemical Romance. It was fucking awful, and I understand why I was bullied. I'm pretty normal now though, so that's nice. The phase where I would accidentally look at boobs for too long. Sorry Aunt Danielle, sorry Mom. Elementary school I was way too trusting and was taken advantage of multiple times and was harassed by teachers and kids. There were also many instances where the teachers refused to give me medical attention. I can explain more if you want, but I can go more into detail if you all want. Not necessarily a phase yet, but this year so far. In the last 5 months, my girlfriend and absolute love of my life left me for a guy she was screwing around with behind my back. I got evicted from my apartment. I'm $700 in debt to my old landlords. My best friend abandoned me in the darkest hour, and then I lost my job because of COVID-19. When I was 19, and really into Marilyn Manson and on SSRIs. Just no. Living it right now. Haven't spoke to anyone in a month. I'm hitting the peak of loneliness, and I think it's actually quite nice not having any friends or people to annoy me all the time. Now. Because I thought life would not get harder than before. 20 to 25. I had always suffered from depression and anxiety. While a teen, and though I had plenty of friends, I suffered from social anxiety and was always the shy one. Slowly some bad social experiences built up until I had a mental breakdown while away at college after a traumatic social experience. I moved back home and disappeared from the world, ignoring all my friends until they stopped trying and started drinking extremely heavily to numb myself. The only thing that kept me from killing myself was thinking about how much it would hurt my mother if I did. Around 25, my brain started to kind of mellow out and my emotions and thought begin to stabilize. I'm 30 now and only just starting to rebuild my social life, and I still have not contacted the few people I knew from back then who I think might understand. It's hard to confront painful memories. Something inside me snapped back then, and it's been a long road to get back to a mentality that feels close to normal. I'm finally at the point where I feel confident I will be able to build a life I enjoy if I just keep trying. I had given up on trying for a long time. It's a shame that mental health services are somewhat socially stigmatized and aren't more readily offered. If I had gotten help at 21, maybe I wouldn't have wasted my 20s as a drunk mess. It's the phase. And here I was, thinking life's just a never-ending shit show of despair and disappointment. Mayo. Currently, I graduated with a degree in engineering in 2019, have been unemployed for a year ever since I graduated. All my friends are successful. This past year, unfortunately, I was in a terrible job that had me crying every day, sometimes more than once, and suicidal with anxiety attacks every couple of days. Thank God we went online for the rest of the year. I don't know what I would have done if I still had to go in and teach every day. Probably when I was emo in high school, lol. For me and my life, this concept does not make sense. I struggle with the same issues I always have. The things about myself which make me are, and have always been, the causes of my worst and most sustained suffering. Everything else can be weighed against each other with no definite victor. I had just dropped out of college. My girlfriend had left me. I loved back and with my mom, and I hated myself. I worked the overpass shift at a Hess, and I would spend all my days waking up for work, come home, stare in the mirror for hours, and wish myself dead. Wake up and do it again. For months. I started drinking, stealing pills, and becoming a social recluse. Then, I found music and poetry. I would write my feelings down into rhyme, and it was just so therapeutic. Then I found real therapy. I started on antidepressants, and started looking more forward to life. Been on Lexapro for 6 years. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and when things get tough I think about how far I've come. I'm leagues away from that time. There's one thing I've learned in life, it's that, even when things seem to be at their lowest, it always gets better. 2017 to 2019, middle stretch of my undergrad in engineering. Was super depressed for a variety of reasons, including a back injury that stopped me from continuing varsity sports, rough breakup from a toxic relationship, and trying to juggle full-time engineering school with a really demanding job that I thought I loved. Didn't help my dad married a really narcissistic woman after my mom died years ago who was emotionally manipulative and abusive, and I haven't been home in years because of her. This culminated in me having a mental health breakdown / cry for help where I overstated with my employees at the aforementioned job in summer 2019, and I was fired for it. I was so depressed after that I nearly gave up, but somehow I got back up, got help, and am doing much better. I realized how soul-sucking that job was, went back to school stronger for it, and am now not only finished the undergrad, but headed for grad school. Stay strong everyone, it gets better. The last 4 years or so, especially 2018, barely made it through. I went through depression, well, still am. But I'm way better off now. University. Spent every day depressed and angry. I spent every day wanting to kill myself. I was so isolated and felt resentment towards everyone. Fucking shithole. When I had cancer. I was diagnosed with leukemia at age 9. Since I was a kid, it was hard for me. Side effects are the worst. From chemo vomits to overweight stew, to being in a hospital bed, and the few times I ate were junk food cravings. It sucked at the time, but I learned a lot from it. Elementary school, when I was obsessed with warrior cats. I had the cat ear headphones, Galaxy backpack, and even fingerless gloves. I used to roleplay at recess with my friends and run around on all fours and hiss at bystanders. It was a dark, dark time. High school. Fuck high school, man. I had a wig phase when I was 13 to 14 years old. I was talking ghetto, wearing Wu-Tang jeans that was hanging on 4D life off of my ass cheeks, a shirt longer than my pants and a red bandana. But I grew up in that kind of neighborhood. You had to fit in somehow. Thinking back on it, damn, embarrassing stuff. I'm so happy cameras on phones weren't a thing back then. Right now. Self-titled not like other girls, my fucking god, I can't believe I did that. I am not like other Jarrells BAKUSE, I am not boy crazy girl, you're not boy crazy, because you're a lesbian STFU. Each time one of my kids hit about 1 to 2 years of age. Basically a slave to them while they're awake, they don't want to sleep, and you can't do anything you want to do without them wrecking it. It's exhausting and drains your soul. The awake phase. Probably the beginning of 2019 till now. My dad was about to divorce my mother after years of abuse and neglect primarily directed towards me. She ended up getting diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he called it off for multiple reasons. All of the work I've done in therapy has gone down the drain during quarantine. My PTSD and suicidal ideation has come back full force and I've shut down almost entirely. Emotionally, I feel like an awful person the majority of the time, because everyone tells me I need to show more empathy towards my mother due to her illness, but it's difficult to when she hasn't ever cared for me. It makes me feel guilty. I guess it hurts to know I'll never get to experience having a mom, as she's never been one for me. I don't think I've ever been this depressed or petrified in my life. After the traumatic birth of my first son, I fell into a terrible postpartum depression. Never had I felt such despair. Everything was black and hopeless. I wanted to die so badly. Solid. The year I was diagnosed bipolar second, and lost a job I loved after. I didn't tell my manager about my diagnosis, because I was scared, and the post-mania depression was so bad that I pretty much laid in bed anytime I wasn't at work. I wasn't sure I was going to survive the months after I lost my job, but I somehow made it through. Middle school was rough. I didn't understand empathy, and being 13 and suicidal with a fucked up home, I didn't spare any emotions for my classmates. I've always been very empathetic, but between 13 to 14 I didn't care if my fellow classmates burned alive. I was a bitch, and it was my worst self. I put down people who came to me for support just because I didn't realize they had shit going on to that, and I cosplayed Homestuck characters that year. Throughout my teens I had no concept of self-worth. I have been overweight for almost my entire life and never viewed myself as anything except a 1/10. I made some terrible choices that I wish I could change due to having such low self-esteem. I put myself in danger and was just straight up stupid. I didn't feel that I deserved any better though. As an adult, things have gotten better, and I have a loving husband that helps build me up. It has been a continual journey towards improving my health both mentally and physically, but I feel much better for it. Also, I had many friends with the same mindset. Friends that were absolutely gorgeous to me felt worthless and made some of the same choices that I did. I never understood how there were so many of us. As a teacher, I always keep that in mind as I try to build my students up. Pre-serious dating, post-sexual discovery. I felt mature enough to date, but not confident enough. It ended up with me just drinking and partying way too much and feeling kinda empty. The one I'm in now, I may be a teen, and we act all ungrateful, but really sometimes it is bad for us too. I'm going back into a depressed mood again, because my parents are not exactly the nicest people for my mental health. They didn't believe me when I said I had depression, and said it was all in my head. Oh yeah, assholes. It was caused by you fucks making me feel like a piece of shit. In my early 20s, I had this phase where I was super closed off to people, even my closest friends, that they just stopped trying to talk to me. I didn't have issues with work or finances at the time, but I have somehow taken it into my head that there's nothing important in my life, so there's nothing to tell my friends or my family. I somehow got past it without ever seeing a therapist, and was able to repair my relationship with the people I've hurt, but it's a conscious effort for me to be more open and honest about myself even now. Hopefully now. I would say November January of 2019 to 2020 life had started to get harder in general, and my girlfriend of 5 years really started to change. She became increasingly paranoid of me being an FBI agent one day and mentally unstable the next. Everything I did was wrong, and when I tried to talk to her I was just told I just don't get it, and honestly I started to think that I was losing my mind and had many dark thoughts about myself and the situation. We broke up close to the end of January, and after my life got significantly better, I got my own place, made some new awesome friends. It was definitely one of the worst phases of my life, especially since most of 2019 came close to being the best year of my life. My 20s. A lot of blunders, dumb mistakes, bad decisions. Should have done 3 more years in the service. Infancy. I couldn't stop crying, I was so depressed. 3rd grade to now on and off anyway. 6th grade when I was edgy as fuck. 2018, now I was going to bad schools. First school, 2018 to 2019, was quite nice, now that I go to another school, but I was completely depressed at the fact that my previous school closed. I wish I stayed there, and I regret it every day now. Current school is horrid. It was like last year, except we transferred classes and were overloaded because the homework system was different. The teachers are nice, I guess, but the school feels so mismanaged. Edit. Next year will most definitely be better. Yeah, I'm transferring schools again, but this time I'll be able to chill out because the school is probably the most properly managed in the district. Plus, I got friends there, and other friends told me they are transferring there later than me, so I'll be quite happy. The day my marriage ended. It's left me so injured inside that I haven't thought about dating seriously for 5 years. Hell, I don't know if I ever want another serious relationship again.